Hey, my name is TJ. I'm a person in long-term recovery. For me, that means I haven't had a drink or a drug since August 9th, 2016. I'm here hosting the Recovery Matters podcast with...
My name's Matt. I'm a person in recovery, and I'm also a Young People and Family Services Coordinator with CCAR.
Hey, glad to have you on today, dude.
Glad to be here.
I would love to hear more about your life and your recovery and stuff like that. I do know a bunch of it. I've heard intermittent stories, and you have a pretty crazy story. What age did you find recovery?
So I can say I got serious about recovery when I was about 22, 23.
Okay, I got sober at 22 as well.
Yep.
What was that like for you?
I mean, it wasn't really, I can't say it was anything new. You know, I started my very first time in treatment, I was 13.
Okay.
So, you know, I knew about rehab, I knew about AA and NA and all this other stuff, but for whatever reason, I thought that, you know, it didn't apply to me, or I was different because I was younger, or, you know, I'm not as bad as these guys, right? And I quickly learned that, like, no, like, I am, if not worse, you know.
What was being in treatment at 13 for the first time like for you? How did you get there? What was that like going into treatment?
So I started, I'll say, enthusiastically experimenting with drugs, because it was a little more than just experimenting, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I was smoking weed pretty regularly. I was messing around with pain pills, cocaine a couple times.
Okay.
So, you know, my parents, who both of which are also, well, my mother's in recovery. She's been sober she just celebrated 35 years. And then my dad, my parents met in rehab.
Okay.
So my dad had about 25 years. He went back out, and, you know, we kind of lost touch. Yeah, so they saw that, you know, I was headed down that road, and you know, they wanted to nip it in the bud. So Rushford had a program down in Durham for 13 to 17-year-old boys with substance abuse issues. A lot of them were there for, you know, they were court mandated there.
Okay.
But there were a couple that were there, you know, because their parents wanted them to go. None of them were there voluntarily. And, you know, the majority of the kids were there for smoking weed.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, and it's hard especially with that age, because, you know, you can't tell a teenager nothing, right? So that experience, while, you know, I can look back on it and definitely say that I learned a lot, right? Did I utilize or implement any of it? Absolutely not.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the only thing that I utilized out of that first time in that treatment center was the phone numbers that I got from the other kids there that I ended up getting high with.
Yep.
You know,
What was that like getting out?
it was weird because, you know, I can remember the first time. I can remember the first time leaving and, like, feeling good, you know, like I felt like myself.
Mm-hmm.
But there was still, like, this underlying anxiety of feeling like I was, like, completely different now, if that makes sense. Like, I felt like I couldn't do any of the stuff that I had used to do, right?
Okay.
Or I couldn't hang out with any of my friends, or I couldn't, like, I don't know. So it was, I'll just say it didn't last long.
Did your parents have a grip on you when you got out? Were they like trying to shut down the whole...
They were. Yeah, they were. You know, I was going to IOP and PHP, you know, 5 days a week for 3 or 4 hours. And, you know, they did what they could because they cared. You know, that's one thing I can say about my parents is they give a shit about me. You know,
Mm-hmm.
they did not want me to throw my life away. And they did whatever they had to do to try to prevent it.
Yep.
But yeah, they definitely did, you know, keep a short leash on me for a little bit.
Okay. At what point did you take back off?
I'd say probably, I mean, so here's the thing, right? I didn't really get bad with my drug use until I was 15, 16. That's when I started really messing around with harder stuff. Like, you know, pain pills were a regular thing. Xanax was a regular thing. Cocaine was when I had the money, you know. But I mean, like, I was smoking weed constantly. You know, I'm going through an ounce in like 3 days. And I'm selling weed. I'm selling whatever I can sell to make money. So, you know, that all progressed really quickly around 15, 16. But leading up until that, I was still, for the most part, just like smoking a lot of weed.
Okay. What was the first time you got in trouble with drugs and alcohol?
Like legal trouble?
Sure.
So the first time I got arrested for drug possession, I was probably 13 or 14.
Yep.
And I just had like a little bit of weed and a grinder. And it wasn't really nothing, but I was already on probation.
Okay.
Right? I got arrested for the first time. I think I was also 13. It was right after I turned 13. You know, I was a rowdy kid, and I didn't like being told what to do. I didn't like to follow the rules or listen to authority. So, you know, there were a couple times where, like, my mom and I would get into arguments, and I'd give her hell, and I'd just start freaking out, punching holes in walls, trashing my bedroom, stuff like that, just throwing a temper tantrum, right? And the first time I got arrested, she had called the cops because I was freaking out. So I caught a disorderly conduct charge, and you know, that was my introduction to the juvenile justice system, and I didn't leave until my 18th birthday.
Wow. Were you on probation then?
Yeah.
And then you graduated probation and on your 18th birthday?
On my 18th birthday.
Wow.
Yep.
And then you took right off.
Hit the ground running.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I bet. So you had some trouble and everything like that. At what point were you able to look at this and be like, hey, this might be a problem in my life?
So the first time I can remember actually realizing that something needed to change, I was 18. It was maybe 4 or 5 months after I had graduated high school. At this point, I'm doing dope. I'm sniffing dope.
Yep.
I'm real big into Xanax. I'm living out of my car. My family couldn't have me around. I was a liability.
Yeah.
And I can remember this one night in particular. It was the end of October. I was sitting in my car, and I was on I don't remember what I was on, but I was just a mess. And I had a gun on the floorboard of my car, and I had my hands kind of over the dash, and I had my head resting on the steering wheel, and I'm staring at the gun, and I was like seriously contemplating killing myself. Just because I felt so alone. I felt like such a failure. I felt like, you know, I had pushed away all the good that I had in my life. So that night I drove myself to Hartford Hospital and just walked into the emergency room, and I was like, listen, I'm getting high. Like, I've been getting high. I can't do this anymore. They brought me right into the ED, and I woke up the next morning. They gave me a whole bunch of meds. I woke up the next morning, and my mom was sitting there.
Yep.
And she was like, come on, we're going to Danbury. She got me into MCCA in Danbury. And that was, I'll never forget the drive out there. I'm sitting there, and I'm sick, right? I'm feeling like shit. I'm miserable. And she's just talking to me, and she's like, listen, you know what you have to do, right? Like, this isn't new to you. And I'm just miserable. I'm crying. And I really thought in that moment that, like, this was it. Like if you hooked me up to a lie detector test and asked me, like, all right, like, are you done using drugs and alcohol? I would have passed with flying colors. Yep. So yeah, I went into detox there. I did 28 days, and then got out and went to a sober house in New Haven.
Okay. So you're down in New Haven, you're 18, you're kind of trying to blend into the recovery community, I assume, right?
Yep.
What's that like for you?
So, so that was my first experience in a sober house, and it was, so my, my third, so when I first moved in, there was a house manager there. His name was Big John. That's what everybody called him. And he met me there. He showed me around. We got to know each other pretty well, pretty quick. And he'd bring me out to meetings and stuff. And then the following night, so my second night there was his 8 months. He's
Wow.
8 months sober. So we all went out to a meeting. They had food, like a little party for him, whatever. The next morning, me and a couple other guys found him dead in the bathroom.
Jesus, dude.
Yeah, from an overdose. And, as terrible as it is, I have to say I'm grateful for that experience because it scared the living shit out of me.
Yeah.
And because of that, I didn't touch a bag of dope for about 3 years.
Wow, okay.
That's not to say I was completely sober,
Yep.
but I refused to touch heroin or fentanyl just because I was so terrified of it.
Yep.
So I spent maybe a month in that sober house. I don't know, what flipped, what switched. I was going to meetings. I didn't have a sponsor. I wasn't working any sort of program. I did about 30 days there and then moved up to my dad's. And I'll talk a little bit about my relationship with my dad eventually, but my dad wasn't really a parent. He was more of like a friend or like I can't even say babysitter. He was just kind of there, so I was able to really do whatever I want. I had free reign. I could, so I moved back in there, and probably within 2 weeks, I was smoking weed again.
Yep.
Probably within another month, I'm dabbling with pills, this and that, coke, drinking, whatever. But it didn't get to that. I was able to manage it, relatively speaking, for a couple years.
Okay.
And then what ended up happening is I met a girl. Well, I reconnected with a girl that I had known for a while, and we got together, and I like completely fell for this girl, like head over heels, right?
Yep.
And I ended up getting her pregnant.
Okay.
And so, at this point, I'm not back doing dope or anything like that, but I'm still dabbling with shit, and I'm not doing well, right? I'll put it that way. So, her and I had talked, and I was like, listen, if like we're gonna have this kid, like I gotta get myself right. And I was determined to do that because I did want to be a father. That was something that I knew full well I wanted. And that was what I did. I checked back into MCCA, and did the 28 days there, and then I got out, and I don't think it was even 2 weeks after I got out, she told me over text that she got rid of the baby, that it probably wasn't even mine, and that she wanted nothing to do with me.
Okay.
Just out of the blue. So I'm like, that completely threw me for a loop. And I mean that killed me.
Yeah.
Right. And then after that, I was just like, you know what, fuck it. I went right back to dope.
Okay.
Like straight back in.
Yep.
And so while I was in MCCA that second time, one of the guys there, that he was actually one of my roommates, his name was Derek. Him and I ended up becoming best friends, right? Like he was literally like a big brother to me. So we kept in touch after we got out for a couple weeks, and then that shit happened with me. I ended up relapsing. Another couple weeks goes by, and we start talking again because he had relapsed too. So one thing leads to another, and I ended up moving to his house in Waterbury.
Mm-hmm.
Just figured, why not be closer to all my drugs, right?
Yep.
And once I hit Waterbury, that was where things really, really went downhill. That was when I started using needles more. I started smoking crack like you wouldn't believe.
Yep.
Anything and everything I could get my hands on. I just didn't want to feel how I had felt, you know. And I mean, shit fell apart fast.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I look back on it and I'm like, over the course of the first 3 months, you know, I probably lost 60 pounds, lost 2 jobs, right? Just absolute insanity. And we lived together and ran together for about a year.
Okay.
About a year. And yeah, that was rough. That was rough.
You had burned everything down by that point.
Everything and more.
Okay, so you're 19, 20?
This was 2020, 2021. So I was, about 20, 21 years old.
So COVID's going on and
Yes.
it's, you know, full blown.
Yep.
That kind of comes right up to about you finding a recovery, right?
Yes.
So you're in Waterbury. It's all burnt down.
Yes.
You have nothing left. You made that choice?
Yeah. So I, you know, for the last month and a half that I was living in Waterbury, every single night, I would go on my phone. I would look at the CT Addiction Services bed website, see what detoxes had beds available. And I told myself every single night, okay, in the morning I'm calling.
Yep.
In the morning I'm calling. And every single morning I'd wake up a little sick and I'd be like, all right, I got to get right before I go. And then, you know, that's it.
Never go.
Never.
Yep.
Until finally it was just, I mean, my body was straight up failing, right?
Yeah.
Like I was, there were times where I'd go to take a hit of crack and it'd make me throw up, but I had nothing to throw up. And I'm sitting there like choking on nothing. Just a whole lot of like health stuff started coming up. And I was like, all right, something really bad is going to happen. So I made that decision. I was like, all right, I got to do something. I got myself in an inner community.
Okay.
Up in Hartford. And when I had checked in, I was about 155 pounds. My skin was like practically see-through. And then on the second or third day there, I found out I had a blood infection.
Oh my God.
So they shipped me out to Hartford Hospital. I was there for 2 days with a bunch of IVs and just, you know, dope sick, right? Yep. And it was terrible.
Yeah.
Terrible. That was by far one of the worst experiences of my life.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I just, you know, something inside my brain flipped and I was like able to look at, you know, the past year of my life and like the situations I had put myself in, the shit that I was doing to myself. I mean, dude, it got to the point where I'm drawing up puddle water into my syringe because I can't afford a 25-cent bottle of water from the bodega, right? And I'm like, how the fuck did I get here? Like, I'm 21 years old, right? Like, I don't have a crazy record or I don't have any, like, crazy nothing. Like, what the fuck am I doing here? And I was just like, no, like, I can't do this. I can't. And I mean, you know, I had skipped over several detox attempts and, you know, AMAs and this and that. You know, like I can say that I consistently wanted my life to be better, but I just wasn't willing to put in the work or wasn't ready to put in the work until this point. So, you know, I go through detox. I went to Carnes Weeks up in Torrington.
Okay. Did
28 days there. Went from there to Lebanon Pines for just under 3 months.
Wow.
And then went back to Torrington to McCall House for another 3 months.
Yep.
And I will forever always be grateful for McCall House. And I always talk about how how great of a program it is because of how it's set up, right? It's set up where there's structure, there's support, you still have your groups and you meet with your clinician, but you can go out, right? You can go out, you can get a job, you can go to meetings, you can talk to people outside in the community and build that network, right? Which is exactly what I did. And because of that, I decided to stay out in the Torrington area because that's where my network was. That was the one part of the state that I hadn't lived or used in, right? So I didn't know any of the bad people or any of the bad areas, right? So I stayed, and it was by far the best decision I've ever made.
Yeah, by the time you get out of that program, you have like 7 months in recovery.
Yep.
And you were kind of like on the right track, right?
Yes.
And you knew it.
Yes. But, that wasn't the end of my running.
Okay.
So I finished McCall House, and I ended up moving in with a good friend of mine still to this day who I met through meetings. I lived with him for a couple months, and I was working full time. I was getting promotions at work. I was killing it at work, right? And it felt good. I was making decent money, and I took that good feeling and I ran with it, and I started to make work my recovery.
Okay.
And that doesn't work for me. I started skipping meetings to work. I started skipping out on hanging out with my friends because of work, right? And sure enough, it was probably, dude, I was probably 6 weeks shy of hitting a year, and I'm back in Waterbury.
Wow.
And I'm like, what the fuck, right? I will say, though, that because I had that taste of real recovery and I knew, like, how good life could get, I used for maybe 3 or 4 days, right? A handful of times. I didn't want to burn my life to the ground again. It wasn't worth it. So I went right back into detox. I didn't even do treatment, because I didn't really need it. Went into detox. I went from detox to a sober house, and I stayed there for, I don't know, like 6-8 months.
Wow.
Something like that. And then ended up moving back in with my buddy that I was living with.
That's really cool. So it worked out perfect.
In a way, yeah.
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 Tell me about your life in recovery from there, from that point, right? So, like, living in this sober house, do you meet other young guys? Like, you guys get to,
Yes. Yeah. So, so the biggest thing for me is my network of people.
Yep.
Right. And unfortunately, a lot of the guys in my network aren't around anymore. That's one of the, recovery can be a double-edged sword. Right? It's great, but it can also fucking hurt because you meet really great people and then shit happens and they're gone.
Yep.
Which, that's what happened with my friend Derek that I was living with in Waterbury. But I'll get into that in a little bit. I mean, my friends today, I call my network my friends because that's what they are, and they're my only friends. I don't associate with anybody from before I moved to Torrington. I got like childhood friends that'll hit me up every once in a while. I'll talk to them, but like if I got high with you, if I did any sort of shit with you, I can't, But yeah, I mean, my friends, we do all kinds of cool shit. I've gone to Thailand with my sponsor.
That's awesome.
Right. And then later that year, a couple of us, we went to Brazil.
Wow.
Right. We ride motorcycles. We go out, we eat, we do things, we have fun, because that's another big thing is a lot of people, myself included, especially when I was younger, I was like, how the fuck am I going to have fun if I can't drink or smoke weed or do this? Like, how am I going to enjoy concerts? How am I going to enjoy the same way everybody else does? You just go and you enjoy it, right? Like,
absolutely.
That's it. One other thing I forgot to mention, while I was in McCall House, I met my girlfriend, who's now my fiancée and the mother of my daughter.
Wow.
So, yeah, a little 13-step action there, you know.
Things happen pretty quickly, huh?
Definitely.
I mean, here's the thing is like with recovery and relationships and all that stuff, you know, I think you brought up a lot of point, like it's not my network, right? Like, because a lot of times like people in early recovery, they get this, you know, advice or support from other people and they're like, get a network, right?
Yes.
And it's like, well, that's what business acquaintances are, right? Like I wanted real sober friends.
Right.
You know, and I experienced life and I was sharing about this specifically at the young people's group yesterday. A gentleman that I had met in early recovery was there, and like, you know, when we had lost one of our friends to an overdose, he and I came a lot closer, right?
Yep.
And we were texting we were in a group chat, the three of us that night, and we were talking about the Laker game and going back and forth, and he thought his other buddy Garrett was in the other room, right, just sleeping, and no, he had secretly went and got drugs and passed away, and he found him in the morning, right? And when you lose a person in a friend group, right, like the group is able to rally around each other.
Yes.
Right, where like people like are able to truly support one another.
Yes.
And be sober together, right? And about a month or two after Garrett had passed away, he calls me up and he's like, you know, we used to play this game called When Was the Last Time You Did Something for the First Time? I'm like, okay. So he would call me up and he would be like, hey, when was the last time you did something for the first time? And I'm like, well, I don't know. Because you ever been to Miami? I was like, I haven't. And we literally booked a trip to Miami.
Yep.
And we're two sober guys on a resort in Miami out on the beach. And, you know, and like, it was awesome. You know, it was awesome, right? We got down there and it was just really hot and we were just really thirsty. So we go to the store and we get a cooler and we fill it with like every type of soda we can get, you know, and we drag this old crappy cooler out and, you know, we crack a soda each and we turn and we cheers each other and we looked at each other and we're like, isn't this the life, dude? You know, right? Like you experienced something for the first time, right? Like you know, looking back at your experience, when would you have ever found yourself in Thailand or Brazil or traveling?
Never.
Right?
Never. I wouldn't have been able to make the flight without getting dope sick. I wouldn't have made it through security. You know what I mean? Never.
Yes.
And like, I mean, that's just, those are kind of like, you know, grand examples, but just like,
yes,
just the quality of life alone, right? Like I can feel comfortable in my own skin. I can sit just like this, right? And not do anything and be totally fine. That would never happen a couple years ago.
Yes.
Ever. I'd be, you know, well, what do I got to do? I got to do something, blah, blah, blah. Just going a million miles an hour. It's incredible. And, you know, I sometimes I like beat myself up because I'm like, why the fuck did you put yourself through all that? Right? Granted, I probably had to go through it, but, you know.
You had to go through it to learn the lesson.
Absolutely.
Right? Same here. Let's talk about one of my favorite things. The greatest gift that I received in recovery was my daughter.
Yes.
Right? Like God did for me what I couldn't do for myself.
Absolutely.
And being a sober parent. And like, you know, I think we're in a world too where like, I think a lot of parents will find recovery into parenthood. Me and you share experience where like we were sober for a pretty decent period of time before we had kids at a young age, and like that experience really opened my eyes up to like a new way of life.
Yes.
Right? And like, hey, you know, regardless of whatever experiences we had with our parents, we get to bring a child into this world and raise them with recovery.
Yes.
Right?
Absolutely.
Tell me about that for you.
So, yeah, I mean, having a child of my own it's definitely been an adjustment, right? But it's like you can't explain it to someone, right? You can't explain the feeling of sitting in the delivery room and like holding your child for the first time, right? But just like, and I find myself all the time, usually like at night when I'm feeding her, like I'll just be looking at her and I'm like, I'm mind blown because it's like, she can have whatever life we want her to have.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like, that's incredible to me.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, me, like, at first I was really kind of like, how do I say this? Hard on myself, or like
Yes.
really, yeah, you know, like I wanted to be the perfect dad. I wanted to do everything perfectly. I didn't want to fuck anything up. I wanted to know everything
Mm-hmm.
off the rip. It's not realistic
No.
by any means,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, you know, now it's just like, at the end of the day, I want her to have everything in her life that I didn't or couldn't have.
Yep.
That's all that I want,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and knowing that, like, she'll never have to deal with parents who are, you know, a sloppy drunk for a dad, or, oh yeah, my dad got a DUI this week. Like, that's not going to happen,
Mm-hmm.
right? She's never going to see me use. She's never going to see her mother use.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I love that.
Yeah. I think one of the best parts about being a sober parent is actually like having the ability to be truly present.
Yes.
Right, because I think that's like some of the greatest gifts that we can give a child is like, hey, I'm present and active in my child's life because I'm sober, right?
Yes.
And showing them the way of world and the recovery, right? For me, like, I talk to Phil a lot, and he always talks about that. He goes, yeah, if you're looking to talk to God, like, get around your kids, right? God will speak to you, and like, because it's fulfillment, right? That like there is no. Because anytime I think about my old life or whatever, right, like there's no real fulfillment in that. And like I feel fulfilled like being a father, right?
Yes.
And like taking my kid out, and like, one of the big things that we like to do is go on hikes. So I take her and the dog out on a hike. And, a young child, like they just have a million questions about the world.
Yep.
Right. And I walk alongside her, and our dog runs back and forth. And, she just rattles off question after question after question. Is like, what's this animal like? Do they bite? Are they friendly, right? And I'm just like, yeah, like, nope, these animals do bite, and, this thing, and like just like a sense of patience, right?
Yes.
Right. And like the thing is too is like I think it teaches us a lot about fear,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that moment where your partner's pregnant, right? Like I had a lot of fear. Like, am I going to be able to be a good father, right? Like, and like, what's this whole experience going to be like?
Right.
Right. And, then like, being in the delivery room, and your child comes out and you're holding it and you're like, wow, I created this. And like, and like just being like so full of awe.
Yes.
Right. And like that fear that existed before this didn't matter,
Mm-hmm.
and that like, what to do.
Yes.
Like
Definitely.
you like there is no right answer, but like what to do, right? And that your child can rely on you.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's fulfilling.
Absolutely. No, I like, I'll never forget, after my daughter was born, they had me go in, what do they call it, the recovery room or whatever.
Yep.
And it was just me and my daughter, and she's laying on my chest, and she's 30 minutes old. She picks her head up and she's staring at me, like eyes open, just staring at me, and we're just staring at each other, and I'm like, holy shit. I'm like, this is me.
Yeah.
Like, it was just the most profound experience. That was a spiritual moment right there.
Oh, absolutely.
Without a doubt. That was just like, and you're 100% right. All that anxiety and that fear and that worry just kind of, it was just like, no, like, she's here.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to figure it out. Everything's going to be totally fine.
Yeah. Everything's going to be okay no matter what.
That's it.
Yeah. And as long as I'm there for my family, like, it's going to be okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah, dude. I love that. So if somebody walked in here and they were in their first 24 hours of recovery, what do you think the best piece of support or advice you can give them is?
Start building your network.
Okay.
Start getting connected immediately. Get phone numbers, get emails if you have to, just talk to people.
Find some community, right?
Absolutely. Get in where you fit in, just something.
I love that. Dude, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. It's awesome to have you and great to spend some time with you and hear more about your life and everything. Thank you.
Absolutely, brother. I'm glad to be here.
Yes, sir.